everybody, welcome to BrickVault. Today we're taking a closer look at this massive life-size scale, or possibly bigger than life-size scale, Stormtrooper helmet. The original design was by somebody called Maskatron. I found it on a website, brickshelf.com. I'm gonna leave the link in the video description below. But this is a 1,668 piece MOC, except there's a lot of pieces that weren't actually in the build that I sort of added on later for sort of structural stability. So we're looking at something that's like probably closer to 1,800 pieces, and most of them are either 2x4 bricks or 1x4 bricks, and it's just a massive hunk of a build, but it looks amazing. And anyways, let's take a closer look at it.
So here is the massive Stormtrooper helmet rotating around. I'm gonna give you just a few more stats about it. It is 34 studs high, or 34 bricks high, I should say, which is about 32 centimeters, or just over 1 foot. The width of the helmet matches nearly the exact same distance, being 40 studs long, and then front to back it is 44 studs, which is nearly 14 inches or 35 centimeters. So needless to say, the build is extremely large, and when I checked out what the original dimensions are for an actual Stormtrooper helmet, this is a little bit bigger, but not by much, maybe just a few centimeters. So that's pretty cool when the builder says that this is a life-size MOC. It actually is slightly larger than life-size, but when I finished the build, I thought it was way bigger, and I think maybe just my idea about a Stormtrooper helmet in general was just off. These helmets are really big and clunky things, but you can see that there's a lot of really nice and sort of smooth lines almost when you're looking at this thing from afar. I especially like the curved lines that you can find in sort of the profile of the helmet. It really does have sort of a very dynamic shape. And then as the helmet turns, you can see, especially sort of at closer detail, that there's a lot of bricks that are sort of pressed in, maybe not all the way. This was made from a lot of sort of cheaper used bricks that felt a little bit stiffer. So in general, I would say this is definitely a build that is better from afar. You can see a little bit of sort of yellowed bricks that are kind of thrown in there. I think when I ordered the parts for this build, there were 650 required 2x4 white bricks, and then like another 400 something 1x4s. So I did definitely get some of the used pieces, but for the most part, I don't really think it affects the overall look of the helmet. When we kind of zoom down towards the eyes, I think this is some of the nicer dimensions, because you can see some sort of plateauing areas, and there's a little bit of space left for the curvature of the actual eyes, or the visor that make up the eyes in the helmet. And as we curve towards sort of the back of the helmet now, you can see the lip that kind of runs around the entire rim, and that is a nice sort of smooth rounded edge, which is just the way it should look from the original design. Now I think the main detail that was missed or just sort of skipped over were those nice little dashed lines that we have sort of on the edge of the Stormtrooper helmet. At this scale, the dashed lines probably wouldn't have turned out that well, and I think that's why they were skipped. But I gotta say, the general curving lines that make up the base of the helmet really do give off the overall feel that this Stormtrooper helmet feels sort of smooth and rounded, even though it's entirely made up of corners and right angles. You've also noticed that it's not just black and white. We've got some dark bluish gray, as well as some light bluish gray, not quite as much, maybe towards the back. And from this lower angle, you can really start to see how much of that front of the helmet dips far below the rest. In fact, I think you have to be roughly 10 or 11 steps into the build before the front and back half even connect. And even then, you have to build up to around step 15, or really layer 15 in the bricks, before you can achieve any kind of structural stability between the front half and the back half of the helmet. Now I'm gonna do a little bit of a change up. This is now a black background. I think the Stormtrooper helmet will pop just a little bit more. And as this thing rotates again from this nice low angle, you can see the nice little dip in the front by the chin, and also that foot in the back, the sort of spiked heel for the helmet, is just a little thing that I added on, and I think anybody that attempts this build has to add on, because the helmet isn't just gonna stay up on its own. Now I mentioned before that there is some other sort of custom building and modifying that go onto this helmet, that little stand at the bottom being one of them. But let's flip this whole thing over, and basically anything that isn't totally white on the underside is all extra stuff I added, and frankly, the internals have a ton of extra support as well. Now, the reason why I added some stuff and basically closed off the bottom is that when this thing spins around, you can see that there is a tiny little slot on the top of the head. That is also a custom modification, just switched out a couple of bricks, and now this gigantic Stormtrooper helmet can double function as a piggy bank. That was just a basic little modification that actually somebody suggested to me during the live stream. It wasn't really a planned sort of modification. And by the way, in case you're wondering how long this takes to build, I know personally that I spent about 3 or 3.5 hours building this off camera just to get the base to sort of work. And that was definitely the most difficult part, was getting the bricks to actually all stick together, because the original LDD or sort of PDF pictures of the LDD show many bricks just kind of floating in space, and you really have to sort of figure out how they're gonna stick together on your own. Once that was in place, the live stream that I did took about 4 hours or so to finish off the head, maybe a little bit longer. And so that totaled around 8 hours to complete the build, which means this is a much slower build than your average Lego set. Now, I already know I talked about the dimensions of the helmet in the beginning, but here is a Stormtrooper minifig and that Stormtrooper brick built fig to sort of just give you a size comparison, at least some other sort of visual reference. And you know what, let's just take this thing out of the light box and put it into this studio. I think this is going to be one of the more iconic and eye-catching pieces that we actually have. Amidst a room full of mostly Lego sets, this one kind of stands out both in its composition and build style. And I gotta say that I feel sort of a nicer sense of accomplishment having completed this particular build compared to most of the other ones that are currently sitting in this room. Anyways, that is going to be it for this little episode, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any suggestions about another Lego custom build you want to see us do in the future, please let us know in the comment section below. And if you like our content, you can always hit that like button or subscribe. All right, links below if you want to build the set. Thanks a lot for watching, and we will see you next time at BrickVault.